Hi friends, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while. Hey everyone, it has been a little bit since I've done a Flosstube. I think it was about 4 months ago. Since then, I have moved all the way across the country, started a new job, so there's a few reasons why I haven't really had the time to do this much recently, but I'm excited to get to talk to you again. Because I had a lot of life changes, it took me a little bit to figure out like, oh, when am I going to have time to stitch? What do I even have room to stitch? So there's definitely been a lot of like readjustments I've done, but it's been exciting. So last time we chatted, you guys all gave me some wonderful advice because I was worried about like, what projects should I bring with me during the move? What gets packed up in deep storage and all of that? You guys gave me such good advice on like bringing the stuff that I really love, and all of that. And I took it to heart and I packed up so many projects and then I barely stitched it all. Did you know that moving's really stressful? So it definitely took a little bit for me to find the time and headspace to really get back into stitching. But I have a little bit. So there's some things I want to share. First, actually, I wanted to share a gift from a friend. So you might see the name of my channel is Tarsier Stitches because I love tarsiers. They're awesome. And then my friend Aya, look what she made me. So this is watercolor, I believe, that she did. So here's this little tarsier. You can see they have nice big hands and they like to wrap around little trees and they kind of jump from tree to tree. It's pretty cool. So she sent this to me several months ago, actually, but I only framed this about a month or two ago. So right now this is on top of one of my dressers on a little easel. Because I'm still relatively new into my new place, I'm still kind of figuring out exactly where everything goes on the walls, but it is really exciting to see my room come together. And also, again from Aya, she is a wonderful friend, and artist. You should really check out her Instagram. She charted and stitched me a little tarsier pin. This is just so adorable. And Aya, why aren't you selling this pattern yet? Spread the love of tarsiers. Everyone should have one. So this is just too precious, and it actually normally lives right up here. I just wanted to get it out so I could share that with all of you. So one of the cool things is apparently I'm a tiny stitcher now. Heavily influenced by my two friends, Kaylee of Kaylee Cross Stitch and then Stitchy Natty on Instagram, is I have started doing a lot of 1/1 stitching, partially because they're just cute. But in many ways, it's a lot more practical if I'm trying to travel somewhere. So here is actually my travel bag at the moment. So I got this really adorable Japanese themed pouch. And in here, I think this is everything for one project. So you can see my little adorable Maneki Neko needle minder. I have another magnetic needle case. This is where I put all of my scrap threads as I stitch. Of course, my needle threader, though I hardly ever use it when I'm stitching over 1/1, but I still bring one with me. Anyway, Ganger scissors, one of my very favorite thread things. I don't know what you call these, multiple thread drops. Anyway, I love these. All of the threads, and then of course I haven't even taken any pictures and shared it on Instagram yet, so the only people who've seen it are the friends who've happened to see me in person. But here, so this is Tukoi. I think the designer is Bold and Crafty on Etsy. So there's gonna be one here and then another here. This is mystery fabric that was gifted to me by Nati. My guess is this is 32 count. It feels like 32 count, but I'm, and I have fallen into the trend of these rectangular nerge. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but these hoops are amazing. I definitely made the effort to buy from a seller where I could ensure that I would get a purple one, purple being my favorite color. It was very important that I get a purple one. But yeah, it's really nice having like just a small project that I can just grab and go. The only thing I need to grab with it is my tablet so I can have my pattern and pattern keeper with me. Part of the reason why it just took me a little bit more to stitch is I have this gigantic floor stand, which I love, but it's just more of a production. So it took more time to figure out like, oh, where am I going to put the chair? Where do I put my tablet and whatever. This is actually my stitchy spot. So normally I will have my big floor stand right in front of me. But my computer's over there facing a different direction. So it makes it hard to watch Flosstube. And it's just like all of these different things that I really just needed a small project that I could just sit anywhere and do. So like when I've gone out to a friend's house or when I was traveling for vacation, these are the types of projects I've been bringing with me. And this really helped me kind of get back into stitching as I was finding my groove in a new place while adjusting to a new job. Oh my goodness, new job. Let's not think about that. But yeah, this isn't the only small thing. So here is, or no, let's start with this one. So this is another mystery piece of fabric gifted to me by Nati. Thank you so much. I've been loving these. Again, this feels like 32 count to me. And I think she did tell me what the designer, what the dyer for the fabric was. I want to say it was started with an M, but that I don't know if that's Mystic Fabrics or Mislaid Pages. So I've just been calling it mystery fabric. So this top one, I'm really excited. So this is Quaker Rice Ball or Quaker Onigiri by Little Stab Studios. So this is a rice ball or onigiri with Quaker motifs in the rice. I was especially excited when I discovered this pattern way back when because my grandma is Quaker and then my grandfather is Okinawan. So this was like the only pattern I've ever found that kind of has both sides of that heritage in one pattern. So this was really nice. The original pattern had a couple different colors for the rice. So a little bit of beige and tans, which was gorgeous and kind of reflects if you had a toasted onigiri. I don't tend to make toasted ones, so that's why I just did it all in white. It was also a little bit simpler. But this was one of the projects I stitched after I had packed up all my stuff. My movers had come, but it was like that awkward week after my movers had come, but my flight to my new place hadn't happened yet, so I had a few of these small projects with me, and I actually stitched this while hanging out with Nati. So I really treasured those moments. So thank you, Nati. Looking forward to our next stitch and hang. And then on the other side of this fabric, I've fallen a little bit in love with La Selva Designs on Etsy. This designer has really gorgeous patterns of animals, they do it really well with not that many colors. I am finding I don't really like patterns with that many colors. It's just too much to juggle, not my style. So being able to have like really beautiful patterns, but kind of this narrow color palette really appeals to me. This one was also fun because the stated colors, it was just a little muted. Not quite what I was looking for. So I spent so much time looking over Google Images, Googling different pictures of sea turtles, and then going to the DMC color palette and figuring out what set of browns I wanted to do. So here I specifically chose kind of a more goldeny brown and a little bit warmer tones, and I'm really happy with how this one came out. So yeah, I'll have to frame these eventually. Then I have more. So first, this piece of fabric is Mislaid Pages Sugalite. So the relatively recently released fabric. I did one order and I ordered a color one of this, and I like the Autumn Bounty one, and I think one of the older fabrics that still happen to be there. It was my first Mislaid Pages order, and then they came and I saw this. I'm like, oh, I need all of this. So then I immediately went and, did a second order, bought a couple more pieces, and then that came, and then I was like, I need more. So I had a third order. So I have ordered this fabric on 3 separate occasions. Jessie, if you're watching, please make more. I love this so much. It's just the perfect fabric in every way. But let's talk about what I've stitched on this piece. So this is a small piece, which I've been liking for, you know, when I'm doing my smalls, especially when I'm, you know, at someone else's house and stitching. This pattern right here is by my friend Nati. So this is 3 sleeping owls. So this was based on a woodblock print from the 1800s. And oh, she just charted it so well. The pattern is exquisite. The woodblock print, of course, where it came from is beautiful. But the way she charted it from that print is gorgeous. So I had a great time stitching this. I feel like I stitched this on my birthday. Wasn't that long ago, so you'd think I'd remember, but my birthday is also right before Christmas, which I know people say that's the best time of the year, but as a teacher, that's when I'm grading finals, so I don't tend to remember exactly what happens on each day kind of during winter break because I'm working and it's not my favorite time in the world. But one thing I am really excited about is the placement of this pattern. I fit it in this lighter spot so well. One of the things that's interesting about this like heavily variegated fabric is now you need to be really intentional about your pattern placement. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to use like every little bit of this fabric because I have to be very careful, but you know, I'm pretty proud of that one. And then on the other end, I started stitching some more stuff. So here, I think this is Cats in Love by Cross Stitching for Fun. I did modify the pattern here a little bit. It said love in the middle. I don't know. I don't really like stitching words. So I try to avoid doing that. Also, I got impatient and I just wanted to be done, even though it's a tiny pattern. Sometimes you just want to be done. I have kind of how I queue up my patterns as I start loading them into Pattern Keeper so I can see what ones I still have yet to stitch, and there are so many loaded into my Pattern Keeper, and yeah, I just needed to like delete some of those and get those off my plate so I can go stitch more things. I've been trying to do a better job of like, yes, I'm gonna stitch it and let's do it, or just not and giving up. And then here, I was going to stitch one flower of Ana Aguayo's Ayacucho flowers, which is gorgeous and breathtaking. It's these really vibrant flowers if you haven't seen, but I messed up on the placement. I started stitching this and then I'm like, wait, that's getting close to the cat. And then I was just like, oh, like kind of imagining what would happen if I filled out this flower and be like, oh yeah, that would definitely be too close to the cat. So we stopped with a single petal. I think what I'm gonna do is I wanna frame both these and cut them out and then see what fabric is left. And then I will go back and see like, can I stitch the rest of the flower? Can I stitch the top half of the flower? I don't know. But for right now, a single petal is fine. And if I need to, I can just finish a single petal. It'll work out. But yes, definitely the next step. Before I stitch anything else on this piece of fabric, I do want to cut these out and finish them because I don't want to run into not having enough margins for everything. But even more exciting, I have some finishes. Over this long weekend, what I did is I sat down and I just finished a bunch of stuff. The first one I did is this tiny little daruma. So this is 1/1 because apparently that's what I do now. I guess I have discovered my sweet spot does tend to be 32 count fabric. That's my favorite for 1/1. If I do want to do higher count fabric, I probably want to experiment with slightly thinner thread than DMC, but because DMC is cheap and has lots of colors, that's what I like to use right now. Anyway, so this little daruma is from a book, I want to say Kawaii Nippon Cross Stitch that I found on Etsy from a Japanese seller. And this little daruma is just so charming on copper fabric, so a little bit metallic. I really love playing with negative space. I think that's turning out to be one of my favorite things about cross stitch. So rather than stitching in the kanji as the original pattern charted, I've left that as negative space, but fits so well in this little blank here. So these blanks are from Art Base on Etsy, and they're like probably the most beautiful pendant blanks I've discovered yet, but you do have to use a bunch of glue for the back. I'm getting better at it. There's definitely another one I recently did where I used way too much glue. And when I started putting on the back, the glue started going out. So you can kind of see there's a little extra glue here. Sorry. Because this is a gift for a friend, so I feel a little bit bad, but sometimes that's how it goes. But yeah, I'm getting better. Here is another Maneki Neko. This is the smallest one I have ever stitched. So this is on 36 count fabric. And I decided I didn't want to stitch in the copper part of it because normally I stitch copper for the little bib, its eyes, there's a little bit on its elbows. And I just decided I didn't want to. So I wanted to play with more negative space. So unfortunately, the arms ended up a little bit more blobby, so I might want to do another pattern modification. If you're new here, I have stitched a million Maneki Nekos. Obviously an overstatement. I've stitched a lot of these Maneki Nekos. So this is a pattern I bought from Cross Stitch by Coconut on Etsy, and I modified a little bit just to suit my tastes. But I really like the black ones with both paws up because they ward off bad spirits. And it's been really fun to try like different variations for different purposes. So I have one that looks really good, stitched 2/2, where I, back stitch definition, but now I've, adding a little bit of negative space to define the paws rather than back stitch. So yeah, this is on 36 count opalescent linen from Extra Design, one of my other very favorite fabric dyers. Her fabric is just so gorgeous. And again, another beautiful pendant blank from Art Base. I love the little leaf shape, but you do need to be a little bit careful with where and how much glue you apply. Unfortunately, it kind of stuck to this a little bit, so this is a little gluey. Anyway, and then here's another one. So this is Calcifer, the fire spirit from Howl's Moving Castle. And this one I stitched for my car. So after this, I'm going to make a little hanger and put it in the rear view mirror of my car. So I bought my first car a couple months ago, which is a Chevy Spark. And one of the lines in Howl's Moving Castle, if you're not aware, is the protagonist tells Calcifer, the fire spirit, "I like your spark." So my car is Calcifer, so Calcifer needs a little Calcifer to go inside. So I wanted to stitch this. This one was difficult in a different way. I didn't trim the fabric as much as I probably should have before I finished it. So in the middle, there was a little bit of slightly too much fabric was overlapping. So I really needed to push it down. So needed a little extra pressure to make sure the back's stuck even with all of the glue. So obviously it's worked. Hopefully it continues to stay in one piece, but I have ordered some clamps that aren't here yet that will hopefully help. So you might notice these are they're kind of thin and they're a little bit rounded. Gorgeous, but does make it a little bit hard sometimes. So I have also experimented with these. These are specifically keychain blanks from a different supplier. This is 3 inches hand embroidery, also on Etsy. And these are nice because you don't need glue. So when you get them, this top piece is separate and there's adhesive already applied in the middle. So you just kind of assemble it, stick it on. And to do these, I did recently buy some clamps because they have, a little bit of straight here. So I just, used 3 and stuck them like this for about half a day. Probably way more than I needed to. I like to make sure that they're going to stay. So these, I actually have 3 of them, all stitched on the same fabric. So this is another pattern by La Selva Designs. So there were 9 different cat silhouettes, so I chose 3. These are actually all gifts. So I have a couple other friends who also have black cats. So these are for some Stitchy friends. One of you, I think you already know that you're getting one because I had to ask you which one most reminded you of your cat. But the other one should be a surprise. I don't know. Maybe you've guessed it already. Other things. So that's all of it for my tiny stitching, but you can see I'm really excited about it. And I have many more tiny stitching patterns I'm looking forward to. Yes. I stitched my family crest. So this one I'm proud of because I charted this one myself. And this is my family crest, which is kind of this comma shape. So it's a comma, but kind of looks like a moon, very gorgeous. So the royal family of Okinawa has a similar-ish crest, but it has 3 of these comma shapes or tomoe shapes. And because my family is a branch family from the royal family of Okinawa, according to family records, like I have looked at the records, so there is documentation, but in the middle there's like relatives unknown, so there's like at least 100-year gap in there at some point, and I'm like, how do we really know then? But anyway, according to family legend, we are a branch family from the royal family of Okinawa. So that's one of the reasons why our family crest might be like, has a piece of the royal family of Okinawa. Whatever it is, it's beautiful and I like it and I wanted to chart it. And I was really proud of myself because this is a 25 by 25, so very small, but still like really gets the idea across. And this one was fun to stitch because this fabric was gifted to me by my friend Jess of Sayo Stitches. You should definitely follow her Instagram. She manages to find some of the most gorgeous patterns by different Japanese designers. Actually, a lot of the patterns I found, I discovered because I saw her find them first. So thanks, Jess. I want to say this is 22 count fabric. But yeah, you'll probably see more of this design in the future. I admit I've been slightly apprehensive to share this one because now I'm like, how many family members are going to be requesting that I stitch them our family crest? But such is life. The reward for a good job is more work, right? Another thing is I also finished a Sashiko project. So occasionally I do Sashiko as well, which is a form of Japanese quilting. So this was just another Olympus kit. I love getting the kits because they are pre-printed with the pattern, and this is the easiest travel project, even easier than the tiny stitching because usually I do projects that only take one type of thread and the pattern is already on the fabric, so I don't need my tablet. But I don't know, it's just, I do prefer cross stitch, but it is nice to have a little bit of variety. The texture is really nice. This one is little Mount Fuji, so you can see the mountain and like little lines across. The original pattern did have a few lines in the middle of the mountain, which I chose not to stitch, partially because so there's a couple different styles of Sashiko, and this type of pattern usually calls for thinner thread than what I use. I just really like this color thread and I wanted to use it. And I tried doing some of the tiny stitches inside the mountains, but it did not look good. It bunched up weirdly because the thread was a little bit thicker. Also, by omitting stitches, I got to be done faster. I love stitching, but I do really often just get really impatient in the middle of a project. I'm like, I need to be done now, which is kind of hilarious because I'm doing this for fun. So you'd think I'd enjoy the middle more, but sometimes no. Oh, I have one thing that I want to show you that I stitched before my move. So way back in August, and then just didn't share it with anyone because it got packed up before I did my very last floss tube before my move. And then, you know, I've just have been doing other stuff. So this, I don't think I've actually unrolled since before I moved. So we'll see. Oh, good. It looks like it's in good condition. So this is Samovar Sampler by Stitchy Princess, who is a Ukrainian designer and has been doing a really nice job of giving us updates of what her life has been like during the war. So if you are not following her already, highly recommend you do that. And she has many lovely patterns. I really like tea. So I found this pattern well over a year ago, and it had already been on my list. So I wanted to make sure to do this, partially for Stitch for Ukraine, but it's something I wanted in my life already. What was kind of cute is I had been watching Flosstube, was stitching this exact pattern, and then Miriam talks about this pattern as I'm stitching it, watching her Flosstube, which was kind of cute. So I believe Miriam of Marumi Crafts will be stitching a version eventually, though I think she wanted to change these to be metallic because her grandmother, I believe, had metal samovars. But this one, I want your advice, because I had an idea of how I wanted to finish it, but now I'm a little unsure. So this is, of course, gorgeous. It's 28 count tea-dyed linen because all of my tea-themed projects, I want to stitch on tea-dyed linen because what else would you do? My original plan was I wanted to frame this in the Sudbury House square tray, which I have right here. But I noticed there isn't actually that much room in here when you open it up. So I'm worried that the stitches would get kind of squashed because on this, like, the stitches are very plump and beautiful. So like I would want to, like, if I'm going to fit it under glass, I would need a mat there to, like, give the stitches some room, but then I wouldn't necessarily have room for the rest of the project. I couldn't, like, stretch it over something. I might have to, like, put it directly on sticky board because that's the thinnest way you can finish something. And I don't know. I'm a little bit apprehensive about putting something on sticky board. And this is just really gorgeous. So maybe I want to frame this and something else goes in here. I don't know. I'm very torn. And I would love your advice and help because, yeah, this has just been sitting rolled up for several months and it would be lovely to display this or use it somehow. Oof, I feel like I just, like, vomited a lot of words all at once. And I dropped things. I am on a roll today. I am so out of practice, but that's what we're here to do, right? I did have a couple of notes because one of the things I would try to do is just make sure I'm keeping an eye on some of the other things that are going on in the world, help educate myself, constantly learn about what's going on with other people, be a better person. So I've started following the Uyghur Human Rights Project, and they have a really informative email list, which is, of course, highly depressing because what's going on with the Uyghurs right now is not fun. It's not necessarily fun to keep track of the many injustices that are going on in the world, but it is something I encourage you to do regularly. Not necessarily every day, but follow people who don't look like yourself and learn about what's going on, because there's unfortunately a lot of not great stuff. One of the really cool things, though, that the Uyghur Human Rights Project has done relatively recently is they came out with this document with recommendations for journalists for how to write and, I believe, pronounce names for Uyghurs, and pointed out some instances of where Uyghur names, instead of their Uyghur name was used in a news article, it was actually their Chinese name, which, you know, that's related to colonization and erasure of this culture. So we want everybody to be referred to by the name they want to be referred by. So I will link their guide in the description box below. They did a fantastic job, and I learned a lot of things that I wasn't even aware of. Some other stitchers that I learned a lot from, I highly recommend, if you haven't already, you should be watching Yasmin from Yasmin's Made with Love. She does a really great job of representing multiple cultures in her stitching and how she thinks about things. She's also recently both released several patterns, and she's doing a fundraiser for the London Marathon. The organization she's raising for is MenCap. So there are a couple patterns which the only way you can get them is by donating to her fundraiser. I am so excited to stitch her patterns, but I'm also like, oh no, I have so many patterns to stitch with so many friends who've come out with lovely things recently, like Miriam's Fluff the Dragon. There's just so many things. But Yaz does a really excellent job of thinking about how do we represent multiple cultures. And that's kind of what I would like to see from a lot of people. Another thing you can do is Nitya of Daybreak Stitchery. She does an excellent job of doing research and education into other cultures, because what we do want to do is not just like take stuff from other cultures and appreciate it out of context. We want to learn a little bit more of what's the important and what's the significant. So she is an excellent model for how to do that. So yeah, part of the reason why I'm here is I'm trying to showcase my little bit of culture, because there's a lot of different Asian themed things I spend a lot of time trying to research and find Asian designers so I can make sure to appreciate them as well. Lastly, don't forget that Stitch for Ukraine is still happening. There is still a war raging on. I know it's definitely not the only injustice going on in the world right now, and there is a lot of bias of how that conflict is treated versus conflicts in other parts of the world where people might have a different skin color. But just because there is this difference in how things are treated doesn't mean we should forget them. So make sure, look up some Ukrainian designers, stitch them, but also don't forget to learn about other injustices that are going on in the world so you can expand your horizons. Yeah. I guess the last thing that I'm trying to do, kind of hard topic change here. I have been looking at my stash and I'm like, oof, I have a lot of stuff and I've been accumulating cross stitch supplies faster than I've been using them. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but this year, because I totally failed at WIPGO last year, largely because of the move. I was doing a pretty good job, and then, you know, I moved all the way across the country and I started a new job. So I just didn't have the time to really keep up with the challenges I had set for myself. What I'm gonna do this year is I'm gonna try mostly stitch from stash. So for all of my projects, I'm going to try to have at least one of the things already be in my stash, whether that's a pattern, a piece of fabric, or thread. The thread's probably the thing I will be buying the most. I also have a bunch of projects that are either partially kitted up or halfway kitted up, so I'm going to try and get through all of those. So that will be my personal challenge for this year. Probably just going to give WIPGO a rest until I kind of have a more of a groove going on, but eventually that is a challenge I would like to try again. So it's lovely to see you all again. Help me figure out what I'm going to do with this. Just like what, oops, I want it on my wall, or I want it not rolled up in a thing. What should it be? How? Help me decide. There are too many options. And I want to make sure whichever one I choose is the right one. Have a lovely rest of your day.